Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? When we were trying to get this podcast off the ground, we had so many questions. How do we record an episode? Where do we find background music? How do we get our show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other places that people like to listen? And where do we find advertisers? The answer to every one of these questions is really simple. Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, distributing, and monetizing your podcast. And best of all, it's 100% free and 100% ridiculously easy to use. Anchor makes it simple to get up and running. You can upload and schedule your podcasts ahead of time. It publishes to all the major podcast platforms. You can easily check your stats. I could go on, but instead, why don't you go and get started? Go to anchor.fm/start to join the e-commerce minute and a diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. That's anchor.fm/start. We can't wait to hear your podcast. It's an e-commerce minute special report.
In today's episode, goodbye Toys R Us.
What'd you think of that important sounding breaking news music there? You think
It's so lovely.
It sounds very important.
Yep. It is very important, though.
Very important. All right. People around the country are mourning the loss of a piece of their childhood today following yesterday's announcement that Toys R Us will close all 800 of its U.S. stores. The announcement comes after a bankruptcy filing in September 2017 and the failure to turn the business around during the last holiday season. The chain employs more than 30,000 people in the U.S. and includes the Babies R Us stores. The chain, whose history traces back to post-World War II baby furniture store, has spent many decades as the country's largest dedicated toy emporium. In 2017, Toys R Us accounted for roughly 1/5 of toy sales in the U.S. This is a real turning point for the toy industry. As the retail industry consolidates, only big boxes like Walmart and Target and e-commerce giant Amazon, generally speaking, are the only places left for consumers to purchase toys. CNBC reported that Toys R Us accounted for 15 to 20% of U.S. toy sales last year, and not all of those sales are expected to go elsewhere after it closes. A Jefferies analyst estimated that the loss of Toys R Us would cause overall toy sales to drop by 10 to 15%. As for the cause of death, online shopping definitely added to its misery, but the company basically killed itself. Toys R Us was saddled with billions of dollars in debt. That kind of debt prohibits you from making necessary investments in their stores. Toys R Us CEO David Brandon conceded in an SEC filing last fall that the company had fallen behind competitors on various fronts, including with regard to general upkeep and the condition of our stores. The money problems date back well before Amazon became a threat, with their debt downgraded to junk status in 2005. At that time, Amazon's total sales were just 4% of what they are now. A year later, the company was taken private by KKR, Bain Capital, and real estate firm Vornado. The $6.6 billion purchase left with $5 billion in debt secured by its assets. It never really recovered. Other challenges were the rise of big boxes like Walmart, whose toy sales alone dwarf Toys R Us in total toy sales. For comparison, toy makers Mattel and Hasbro each sold $1 billion worth of toys at Walmart last year, more than twice as what they sold at Toys R Us. And like most retailers, Toys R Us also lost sales to online rivals such as Amazon that offered lower prices and quick shipping. But much of the chain's resources were devoted to paying off that massive debt load rather than staying competitive. When Toys R Us filed for bankruptcy in September 2017, it disclosed it had about $5 billion in debt and was spending about $400 million a year just to service the debt. According to the Wall Street Journal, Toys R Us owes a lot to the biggest toy makers. Mattel and Hasbro are Toys R Us' biggest unsecured creditors. Mattel is owed more than $135 million, while Hasbro is owed $59 million, according to court papers.
Yikes! Yikes! That's a lot. This is a breaking news. I'm actually doing this on the street, so there's that. I know we're just like running around and hey, we got a breaking news. Anyway, well, we've seen this coming though, right? Like a few months ago, they filed for bankruptcy and instruction and stuff like that, and they, there it is.
I mean, with the writing on the wall, we had intended to do a story on this anyway, and it just dropped on our lap last night.
Yeah, pretty much.
There's no way that they were going to turn this around. It's unfortunate.
No.
You look on social media today, a lot of people are nostalgic, but you also get with that nostalgia how many people actually, we're really going to miss Toys R Us, but when's the last time that you
actually went to Toys R Us, right?
Right. I have a piece of sentimental piece to this because Toys R Us was my first paying job with a W-2 besides street hustling and all the other stuff that teenagers do. So I worked there for about 2 years. It was the best and most low paid job I ever had in my life. But it was a great place to work. But it was at a different time when toys were a different thing. And, they used to have people around Christmas just lining up to get in the door. I'm sure they don't see that anymore. And stepping inside those stores in later years, just out of curiosity, I found it to be just real confusing to get around and not merchandised very well. And I think a lot of people online have echoed the same thing, where it's it's a shell of what it used to be due to competition, bad management, and they just really couldn't take care of the stores anymore.
Yep. Well, I mean, it's also sad news for small toy makers. I mean, Hasbro and the other guys are the biggies are, they'll deal with it somehow. But, the small guys, like, the hell do they do?
Yeah, that's really unfortunate, because you have these people who run smaller toy companies. A lot of creative toys the kids won't ever get to see because there's no place. The toy makers don't have a place to sell them except online, and there's no place to really showcase them anymore. And a lot of your creative toys, like there's not a lot, except for maybe real small niche boutique chains, which are usually only in more affluent areas. They don't, you don't see little boutique toy stores anymore. You don't see single toy stores, and if you do, it's in an area that's a little bit more affluent. So it's really unfortunate. I don't really know what else to say about this. It's just it's an end of an era, and I guess that's why we put such importance on it, because a lot of people grew up with Toys R Us. And I'm going to link a bunch of while I was putting the story together, I found a bunch of videos, commercials, and stuff. I'll put that online. I'll put that on our website, ecommerceminute.co. And if you have any Toys R Us memories to share, give us a shout out on social media at Sumo Heavy, or go to our ecommerceminute.co page and drop us a line there. But yeah, it's being an adult.
This was your breaking news.
Cue breaking news music. Dun, 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 dun.
We have some of that.
All right. That'll wrap that up. And this has been your e-commerce minute special report. This is our first special report. We're just trying something out here. See if if there's some breaking news. We'll drop in a story real quick, and you get an extra podcast out of it. So there, and it's all free. It's all free of charge, because that's what we do.
Just listen.
We like to help people. All right, that's your e-commerce minute. We'll see you on our regularly scheduled show tomorrow.